Welcome to this Infosecurity Europe podcast.
Hi, my name's Maxine Holt. I'm Senior Director at Omdia. I run the Cybersecurity Research team at Omdia. So in terms of the biggest security threats when it comes to remote working, I think it depends on both the organisation and the individual. So if we start with the organisation, first of all, have they got enough equipment to provide remote working staff with corporately provisioned devices? If they've got that, and that's great, then the biggest concerns are often around ensuring that employees have the right access to the right applications, the right data, the right services that they need, but to be able to do that securely. But for a lot of organisations, we've found BYOD has had to be deployed because there isn't enough laptops, for example. And so then the biggest security concerns become ensuring that those devices are secure enough to provide access to corporate systems and data, and they're not, in general, they're not secure enough for that. So that is a massive concern and threat for organisations. But then we need to think about the considerations for individuals. When you're a remote employee, and the same applies to me as well, you don't tend to have the same security mindset as if you're in an office environment. So we're definitely less vigilant. Perhaps we walk away from our laptops without locking them. And then maybe a homeschool child comes in and decides that they need to use the computer. So easily done. And then another is perhaps easily guessed passwords on routers, which is an easy routing for would-be attackers, or not applying updates to equipment that can then leave vulnerabilities unpatched. And then, as a remote worker as well, we can't so easily go get a coffee to have a chat with someone for 10 minutes about the challenges that we're facing. So it can feel, I think, perhaps a little bit isolated as well. So mitigating the risks of remote working should start with layered defences. Layered defences anyway, but that applies the same in a remote environment as it does to an in-office environment. And certainly organisations need data protection. So you've got your data classification, DLP, etc. You need your identity authentication and access controls. You need endpoint protection, VPN, access, whatever, but also to ensure that the remote working environment is as secure as it can be. IT and InfoSec functions, they're working with remote employees to provide step-by-step guidance on securing routers. For example, I've mentioned insecure routers as being a possible route in for would-be attackers. And I have definitely seen some really great help and support with regular hints and tips for staying secure when you're working from home. And that really does improve awareness and education. And I think that it's really important here to do this frequently. You can't do it every 3 months or every 6 months. You have to do frequent check-ins. And that helps individuals feel engaged. And I also want to mention support for mental health here as well, because security obviously may well decline if an individual is suffering from mental health challenges, including the isolation that I mentioned earlier. So there's certainly some evidence of the boundaries here where when we think about InfoSec responsibilities and HR responsibilities, they're merging to help support the individual and to support the organisation. And I think this is certainly a great step forward. So I think that IT and security teams are quite rightly concerned about remote working. At Omdia, we undertook a remote working survey in 2020, and this highlighted some of the challenges with the switch to remote working. The top one of that was ensuring that employees could work securely and remotely and in compliance with industry requirements, which sure as heck isn't easy, especially when you consider another survey that we did at Omdia. We put this one alongside it, the ICT Enterprise Insights survey that took place during the first wave of the pandemic last year. We interviewed around 5,000 organisations, and we found that fewer than 43% have a fully developed or well-advanced proactive approach to cybersecurity and digital risk, which is good for those 43%. It's great that they've moved forward to that extent, but of course it does leave over 57% of organisations with a substantially inadequate approach. So that's, that absolutely has to be of concern. And the threats with remote working can be delivered via various routes, but what we do know is that policies require review in this reset normality. We need to improve this proactive approach, deliver sustainable security controls. And of course, these controls are not just about technology, they're about people and process as well. And they need to be fit for purpose in this new environment that we find ourselves in. And I've often talked about peeling back the sticking plaster, where information security, IT security teams did loads last year. They were fantastic in the early stages of the pandemic to support remote working by, they had to apply a sticking plaster to security. And they're now at the stage of peeling back this sticking plaster and seeing probably quite a mishmash of security controls that are not fit for purpose in a more permanent remote working environment that we're finding ourselves in. And so these controls need quite serious review, I think, to make them fit for purpose in this reset normality.
Thank you for listening to this Infosecurity Europe podcast.